There is a long-held belief that arenas must have a professional sports team in order to survive. In fact, an arena without one was seen as a disaster, a sink pit of lost opportunity. It turns out, though, that not only can arenas find success without an NBA or NHL franchise, but these can actually be a drag on the building's overall revenue. I'm Cheyenne Hollis, this is The Touchback, and here is why arenas abandoned by professional sports teams are now thriving.
Farewell and thank you, old friend, for loving everyone who visited you for 47 years.
It's wild to think about, but we are now approaching 5 years since the last Golden State Warriors game ever to be played in Oakland Arena. In the aftermath of that, people were stumbling all over themselves to talk about the decline of Oakland, the fact the city wouldn't build a new stadium, this, that, and the other. These narratives exist to this day. The problem? These narratives are nothing but a bunch of crap. Oakland Arena itself is proof of that. Some out there think the former home of the Warriors is a decaying structure, having long since been condemned. Oops! Turns out that 2022 was the most fiscally successful year in the building's nearly 60-year history. So much for dying, eh? 2023 figures haven't been released yet, but the story is likely to be similar given the busy schedule Oakland Arena has maintained post-Warriors. Concerts, PBR, other random sporting events, comedy acts, really just any sort of entertainment option, you name it, and chances are it's happening at Oakland Arena. You've got K-pop stars, bands like Pearl Jam, rap acts like Nicki Minaj, and of course, Mana. Look, I cannot name you a single Mana song. Couldn't even hum you one. I don't even know what these individuals look like, but I'll be damned if it doesn't seem that this band is playing everywhere in the world at the same time. It seems as if every time I visit a city, Mana is either scheduled to be playing there or has already held a concert in that location. Mad props for that. I don't know the first thing about Mana, but they seem to be hugely popular and wildly successful. That, though, is not the takeaway. The takeaway here is that this wouldn't happen at a derelict building in a faltering town. Everyone wrongly assumed that the Oakland Arena was dead without the Warriors. It turns out the building is far more successful, far more profitable without an NBA franchise calling it home. A similar story is playing out over in Glendale, Arizona and Desert Diamond Arena, formerly known as Gila River Arena. They told the Coyotes to go kick rocks after the franchise continued to miss payments to the arena manager. Instead of continuing to deal with a bad tenant constantly late with payments, they opted to go it alone. The results speak for themselves. 2022 was a banner year for Desert Diamond Arena in terms of revenue, bettering anything the facility did with an NHL team using it. As for those Arizona Coyotes, well, they are currently playing in a college arena and still have made no real headway, no progress on a new facility in the desert. The myth arenas need a professional sports team is well and truly busted, but why exactly are arenas abandoned by professional sports teams thriving right now? There are three main reasons for this. First, of course, is that it gives the buildings more flexibility in terms of scheduling. When you aren't locked into hosting 40 to 50 games annually, many of which fall on prime dates, it gives you greater flexibility to bring in different entertainment options throughout the year. It also empowers operators to bring in acts who want to schedule their performance over a series of days, which is really hard when you have a professional sports team using that building. If Cirque du Soleil wants 4 days, you can give it to them without question. Disney on Ice needs 5, no problem. Really, it's just about having more dates to play with. When you have more dates available to these acts, well, it brings us to our second reason why arenas are now doing good without sports teams. Greater profitability is the second reason why these venues are finding success without teams. Casey Pratt has mentioned this a few times about the Oakland Coliseum and its relationship with the A's, but really, it is pretty true for many sports facilities. Teams usually have agreements in place to receive a portion, if not all, of the money made from things like parking and concessions. That, though, isn't the case for just about every other tenant who rents out the building. Because of this, it doesn't matter if attendance for a concert is half or even a third of a game. The arena is going to generate more revenue anyway because they get it from parking, concessions, and all of that good stuff. What's more, quite a few sports teams are not paying a fair market rate in terms of rent. In other words, they get a discount for the right to siphon off parking and concessions profits? You don't need an MBA to understand this is not a particularly good deal for arenas. The third main reason here is that these arenas are still useful. They still have life even without a sports team to use it. The idea you can only get 20 to 30 years from an arena before needing a new one is patently false. While sports teams want a bunch of other bells and whistles to sell fans on, these are pretty much unnecessary luxuries for just about every other event to be using the arena. What's more, you're paying over the top for these in order to bring in less revenue by keeping a sports team. To that end, it seems almost irresponsible for cities and governments to build a new arena for an NHL or an NBA team in a city that has one that's still somewhere between 15 and 30 to 40 years old. Not unless that team is either willing to use it just as any other tenant would or fund the projects themselves like the Warriors did in San Francisco. That brings us to the Washington Wizards and the Washington Capitals. The owners of those teams, Ted Leonsis, has found some patsy in Northern Virginia to help him use taxpayer money for a new arena project. But here's the twist. Capital One Arena, the team's current facility in Washington, D.C., is owned by Monumental Sports and Entertainment. You know, the same entity that also owns the Wizards and Capitals. It's pretty obvious that this ownership group is well aware that having those teams use the building they own is a bad deal for them. This is why the Wizards and Capitals are moving to a new taxpayer-funded arena. It frees up Capital One Arena. The owners can now make more money there since it won't have their teams clogging up so many dates on the calendar. Let's pause for a second and just think about that. A ownership group that owns their building outright is moving so it can then use that building it owns to copy what it has seen happen in Arizona and Oakland. Like, what is happening here? Like, this is so very, very dodgy. There is no denying that fact. It also highlights this massive disconnect regarding arena situations in general. Just last year, NBA Commissioner Adam Silver went on record saying every team needed a state-of-the-art arena. Why though? It ignores the reality of the situation these arenas are now seeing for themselves. Then of course being they make more money without teams, expecting a city or a local government to pay for a new NBA or NHL facility when doing so means less money for the operators and owners of said building is just stupid with a capital S. If a franchise wants to undergo one of these projects either on their own or through private financing and investment, so be it. That is well within their rights and I think they should be encouraged to do so. However, asking taxpayers in a city with a perfectly good arena to build another one because the local sports teams want to make more money for themselves is, well, quite frankly, nonsense. Not when the venue could simply evict the sports team from the existing facility and be better off for it. By the way, teams clearly understand this now, or the Wizards wouldn't be leaving an arena they own. If these owners understand arenas abandoned by NBA and NHL teams are thriving and now want to do similar with buildings they own, well, it should tell you all you need to know about the current situation. Arenas do not need sports teams, but sports teams need arena, and it is time the relationship between the two reflected this reality. Thank you for watching this video. If you would like to know a little bit more about the wild relocation history of the Washington Wizards, well, just check out the video in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. Until next time, I am Cheyenne Hollis. This is The Touchback, and as always, hashtag take it out to the 25.